So they took maybe 20 bucks and an old watch?
You're okay, because you don't look okay.
I work for some very dangerous people.
Everybody
Live. But I left it behind.
And you don't fucking do that.
You look like
Me?
At first glance, Hutch Mansell looks like your everyday suburban dada, quiet, overlooked, and just trying to get by. But what if that ordinary man was actually hiding a violent past, one that turns his life upside down after a simple home invasion? In today's video on Hidden Real Facts, we're diving deep into Bob Odenkirk's explosive action thriller Nobody. We'll break down how this film flips the irregular guy trope on its head, explore hidden details you probably missed, and uncover some fascinating behind-the-scenes facts about how the movie was made. From its brutal fight choreography to Odenkirk's surprising transformation into an action star, this is one story where being a nobody is far deadlier than it sounds. Stick around, or you might never look at Hutch the same way again. What if a regular family man, someone everyone thinks is a nobody, suddenly turns out to be the most dangerous person you could ever meet? That's exactly what the movie Nobody gives us, with Bob Odenkirk stepping into a role that shocked audiences and showed a whole new side of him. In today's video on Hidden Real Facts, we're diving deep into this action-packed thriller. We'll break down the story, point out hidden details you might have missed while watching, and uncover some amazing behind-the-scenes facts about how this movie was made. From the brutal fight scenes that feel so real, to the clever little hints about the main character's past, there's a lot more to this film than just fists flying and bullets blasting. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll see why Nobody is not just another action movie. It's a smart, surprising, and unforgettable ride that deserves a closer look. Hutch Mansell sits in an interrogation room, badly bruised and injured. Two FBI agents question him about who he really is, but Hutch only replies that he is nobody. Flashback to Hutch's normal life. He works in an office, lives with his wife Becca, his teenage son Brady, and young daughter Sammy. His marriage feels distant, and his life is dull. One night, two burglars break into their home with a gun. Hutch and Brady catch them, but Hutch doesn't fight back even though he has a golf club in his hands. The thieves leave with Hutch's watch and some cash. Everyone around him thinks Hutch is weak for not fighting, but he later tells his brother Harry that he held back because he noticed the burglar's gun wasn't loaded. His brother-in-law Charlie tries to give him a gun, but Hutch refuses. Hutch also offers to buy out his father-in-law Eddie's business, but Eddie rejects the deal. The next night, Sammy tells Hutch her cat bracelet is missing. Believing the burglars took it, Hutch sets out to find them. He tracks them down using a tattoo clue, but after realizing they don't have the bracelet and were only stealing to pay for their baby's medical care, he walks away. On his way home, Hutch rides a bus where drunk thugs start harassing a young woman. He finally snaps and fights them with brutal skill. What Hutch doesn't know is that one of the men, Teddy, is the brother of Yulian Kuznetsov, a violent Russian crime boss in charge of the mob's money. Hutch badly injures Teddy in the fight, leaving him in a coma. This enrages Yulian. Hutch goes home, where Becca helps patch him up. For the first time in years, Hutch vents his anger about his boring life, and he and Becca begin to reconnect. Yulian finds Hutch using a dropped MetroCard and sends assassins to kill him. Hutch's brother Harry warns him about who Yulian is and tells him to contact the barber, Hutch's old government handler. When the assassins arrive, Hutch hides his family, kills most of them, but gets captured. In the trunk of their car, he uses a fire extinguisher to crash the car and escape. Hutch sends his family away to safety and reveals to the dying gangsters that he was once an auditor, a government assassin sent and when no one else could handle the job. He remembers sparing one target who turned his life around, which inspired Hutch to leave the job and settle down. After hiding his family, Hutch retrieves a secret stash of gold, burns down his own house to erase evidence, and steals his neighbor's car. Meanwhile, two hitmen try to kill Hutch's father, David, in his retirement home. But David, a retired FBI agent, kills them easily. Hutch then buys Eddie's metal factory with his gold and fills it with traps. He attacks Julian's headquarters, burns his money, and confronts him at his nightclub with a claymore mine, offering a chance to walk away. Julian refuses. Julian and his army chase Hutch to the factory, where Hutch, David, and Harry fight them off in bloody waves. Just when they think it's over, Julian wounds Harry and corners Hutch. Out of bullets, Hutch tackles Julian with the claymore strapped to bulletproof glass. The blast kills Julian, while Hutch survives. The police arrest Hutch, bringing us back to the opening scene. But then the agents receive mysterious calls, and Hutch is released without charges. 3 months later, Hutch and his family are house hunting again, and Hutch gets a phone call suggesting his violent past isn't finished yet. In a mid-credits scene, David and Harry are shown driving in a camper full of weapons, hinting at more adventures to come. The fluorescent lights hummed, a flat, sickly yellow wash over the sterile room. Hutch Mansell sat, a landscape of purple and green bruises blooming across his face, a split lip testament to recent violence. His left eye, swollen shut, pulsed with a dull ache. The chair, cold metal against his skin, offered no comfort. Two men, sharp suits and sharper gazes, sat across the table. One taped a pen against a thick file. "Mr. Mansell," the first agent began, his voice a low thrum. "We have a few questions." Hutch shifted, the movement a symphony of groans from his protesting muscles. He tasted blood, metallic and stale. "Your name is Hutch Mansell," the second agent supplied, his tone flat, a statement, not a question. "Born August 14, 1975, married to Rebecca Mansell. 2 children, Brady and Samantha." Hutch stared at the chipped paint on the wall. The hum of the lights grew louder in his ears. "We're trying to understand what happened," the first agent continued. "The body count, Mr. Mansell. This year, unprecedented. A broken bar mess." A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched Hutch's lips, pulling at the raw skin. "I'm nobody," he murmured, the words raspy. "Just a nobody." The agent across from him leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "Nobody does what you did, Mr. Mansell." A flicker in Hutch's good eye, a memory, sharp and sudden, of a life that was anything but. The alarm blared, a digital shriek at 6:30 a.m., slicing through the thin veil of sleep. Hutch's hand slapped the snooze button, a practice motion. The air in the bedroom hung heavy, still with unspoken words and the faint scent of old lavender. Becca lay beside him, a still form under the duvet, her back turned. He watched the gentle rise and fall of her shoulders, a silent canyon between them. Years had built that chasm, brick by brick, routine by routine. He swung his legs out of bed, the floorboards groaning under his weight. Downstairs, the toaster popped, a sudden exclamation in the quiet house. Sammy, his daughter, her small frame dwarfed by the kitchen table, chewed her cereal with diligent focus, a cat-eared headband perched precariously on her head. Brady, his teenage son, slumped over a phone, a grimace etched into his features as he scrolled. "Morning, kiddo," Hutch offered, his voice a little too bright. Sammy offered a half-smile, her eyes still clouded with sleep. "Dad, can you get the milk?" He retrieved the carton, the cold plastic a jolt against his fingers. Becca entered the kitchen, her movements fluid, practiced. She poured coffee, her gaze distant, fixed on some unseen point beyond the window. "Another day, an author, a broken bar, everything," she said, her voice flat, devoid of inflection. Hutch simply nodded, a tight knot forming in his stomach. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable, punctuated only by the clinking of spoons against ceramic and the muted sounds from Brady's phone. He felt the weight of their expectations, the unspoken disappointment that clung to him like cheap cologne. He was the man who folded laundry, who took out the trash, who commuted to a job that asked nothing of him beyond showing up. He was the definition of ordinary. That night, the ordinary shattered. A scrapping sound, faint but distinct, pulled Hutch from the depths of the documentary about artisanal cheese. Becca was asleep. Sammy and Brady were in their rooms. He froze, straining his ears. The sound came again, a muffled thunk from downstairs. His heart began to hammer, a frantic drum against his ribs. He eased out of his armchair, every muscle tensing. The house was dark, save for the blue glow of a nightlight in the hallway. He crept towards the stairs, his bare feet silent on the carpet. A silhouette moved in the living room, hulking against the faint streetlight seeping through the curtains. "Dad," Brady's voice, raw with sleep and fear, sliced through the quiet. He stood at his bedroom door, a baseball bat clutched in his hands, knuckles white. "Stay back," Hutch whispered, pushing his son gently behind him. He reached for the golf bag by the Contatc, pulling out a 5-iron. The cold metal felt alien in his hand. Two figures emerged from the shadows. One, a hulking man with the ski mask, held a handgun, its barrel glinting dully. The other, slighter, fumbled with the small bag. "Stay cool, old man," the masked figure grunted. His voice got shrill. "Just want the cash. No one gets hurt." Hutch raised the golf club, a useless gesture. His gaze locked onto the pistol. His breath hitched. The hammer was down. The cylinder was empty. Unloaded. A cheap drop. A surge, cold and electric, shot through him. The primal urge to act, to strike, coiled in his gut. He saw the fear in Brady's eyes, the way his son looked to him for direction, for protection. But he didn't move. "Just take it," Hutch said, his voice a surprising calm. He gestured towards the small ceramic bowl on the hall table, where loose change and a few crumpled bills lay. The slighter thief scooped them up, his movements jerky. He snatched Hutch's watch from his wrist, a cheap digital thing, but a line had been crossed. "Get out," Hutch breathed, the words barely audible. The two figures backed away, melting into the night as silently as they had come. The front door clicked shut. Brady lowered the bat, his face paled, eyes wide with confusion and a dawning disgust. "A broken bar. Why didn't you do anything?" His voice cracked. "You had a club." "They had a broken bar. Nothing." Hutch looked at the golf club in his hand, then at his son. The words caught in his throat. He saw the disappointment, sharp and unmistakable, in Brady's eyes. The next morning, the silence was heavier than ever. Becca moved through the house like a ghost, her jaw tight. The police had come and gone, their questions bland, their sympathy perfunctory. "Seriously, Hutch?" Charlie, Becca's brother, a burly man with the perpetual sneer, leaned against the kitchen counter, sipping his coffee. "You just a broken bar. Let them take your stuff. You let them walk." Hutch stared at his untouched toast. "It wasn't worth it." "Charlie, not worth it?" Charlie scoffed, his eyes narrowing. "My sister, your kids, they were in danger. I got a piece I can let you have, for protection." Hutch shook his head. "I'm good." Charlie snorted, pushing off the counter. "Right, you're always a good, Hutch. That's the problem." He stomped out, his disdain a palpable cloud. Later that day, Harry, Hutch's brother, a gravel-voiced presence on the other end of the phone, listened patiently. "I saw the gun, Harry," Hutch explained, his voice low. "A confession. It was unloaded. A prop. I could have a broken bar. I could have hurt them badly. And that's a problem for you now?" Harry's voice held a knowing edge. "You let them walk because you knew they weren't a threat, not because you were scared. You were thinking, weren't you?" "I was thinking of Brady," Hutch admitted, the light tasting bitter. "Of what he'd see." Harry hummed, a sound of understanding. "Right, a good dad. A normal dad." The conversation ended, leaving Hutch with a hollow echo. He was trying to be normal, to bury the thing that once defined him, but the earth was thin, and the past kept clawing its way back. He tried to buy out Eddie, his father-in-law, from the metal fabrication business, a desperate attempt to gain some control, some purpose. Eddie, a man carved from granite, simply looked at him over his spectacles. "That's a bad offer, Hutch." "A really bad offer." That dismissal stung, a reminder of his perceived inadequacy. That evening, Sammy's small voice pierced the quiet. "My bracelet's gone." She held up her wrist, bare of the cheap, plastic cat bracelet she cherished. Tears welled in her eyes. "They took it, didn't they?" Hutch felt a jolt, sharp and visceral. This was different. This was Sammy's. This was personal. The mundane evaporated, replaced by a cold, clear focus. "No," he said, his voice firm. "They didn't. I'll get it back." He drove through the night, a silent hunter. The address the police had given him, a dingy apartment block on the wrong side of town, pulsed with a grim energy. He found the building, a decaying brick structure, its windows dark eyes staring out into the night. He waited, a shadow among shadows, until he saw him, the slighter thief, the one who had taken the cash. He sported a distinctive tattoo on his wrist, a crudely drawn spider. Hutch followed him, a silent predator, through narrow, rubbish-strewn alleys, past flickering streetlights, until the man entered a dilapidated convenience store. Hutch slipped in behind him. The thief, oblivious, rummaged through a shelf of canned goods. "Excuse me," Hutch said, his voice low, calm. The man spun around, his eyes wide, a flicker of recognition, then fear. "My daughter's bracelet," Hutch continued, his gaze unwavering. "The cat one." "You took it," the thief stammered, his hands shaking. "Yeah, broken bar. I don't know what you're talking about, man." Hutch stepped closer, his shadow falling over the smaller man. "The watch, the cash, that's one thing. But the bracelet, she needs it back." The thief's eyes darted around, searching for an escape. "Look, man, we didn't take no bracelet, we just a broken bar. We needed the money. My kid, she's sick. Hospital bills." "Man," he pulled out his wallet, a few crumpled bills falling onto the floor. A picture of a tiny, swaddled infant peeked out from a clear plastic sleeve. Hutch saw it, the raw desperation, the fear for a child. The surge of cold anger receded, replaced by a strange, unsettling empathy. He looked at the spider tattoo again, then back at the man's face. He knew he didn't have the bracelet. He saw the truth in his eyes. He turned, walking out of the store, the scent of cheap disinfectant and stale coffee fading behind him. The bracelet was gone, but something else had shifted. The mundane had cracked, and a sliver of the old Hutch had emerged. The bus rumbled, a metal beast crawling through the city's veins. Hutch stared out the window, the neon blur a meaningless kaleidoscope. He felt the dull ache of disappointment, the failure to retrieve Sammy's small treasure. He was still the man who couldn't fix things. Then, a sudden commotion. A group of men, reeking of stale beer and cheap cologne, stumbled onto the bus. Laughter, coarse and loud, filled the air. They swayed, jostling passengers, their eyes scanning for trouble. They found it in a young woman, sitting alone, clutching a book. "Hey, pretty thing," one slurred, nudging her with his elbow. "Why you all alone? Don't you want some company?" The woman flinched, pulling her bag closer. "Leave me alone," she whispered, her voice trembling. Another man, larger, with a scar bisecting his eyebrow, leaned in, his face inches from hers. "What was that, sweetheart?" "Can't hear you over the sound of your pretty little heart beating." He reached out, his fingers brushing her hair. Hutch watched, a cold fire igniting in his gut. The mundane had been a cage, but these a broken bar. This was an affront. The primal urge, buried deep, raw to life. He rose from his seat. "Hey," Hutch said, his voice calm, clear, cutting through the drunken banter. "Leave her alone." The scarred man turned, a sneer twisting his features. "What's it to you, Grandpa? This ain't your stop." Hutch took a step forward. "It is now." The scarred man laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Oh, a hero. Think you're tough, old man." He lunged, a clumsy, beer-fueled rush. Hutch moved. It wasn't a thought, but an instinct, a muscle memory long dormant. He sidestepped the wild punch, his hand shooting out, palm connecting with the man's jaw. A sickening crack echoed through the bus. The man stumbled, his eyes glazing over. Another thug, Teddy, a younger man with a cruel glint in his eye, swung a beer bottle. Hutch ducked, the bottle whistling past his ear. He twisted, his elbow connecting with Teddy's nose. A wet crunch. Teddy reeled back, clutching his face, blood gushing between his fingers. The bus erupted into chaos. Passengers screamed, scrambling away. The remaining thugs, a blur of flailing limbs and shouted curses, descended on Hutch. He met them with an unnerving efficiency. A knee to the groin, a quick jab to the solar plexus, a head slammed against the bus window. He moved with a brutal elegance, each strike precise, devastating. He felt the familiar surge, the cold clarity that came with violence, a dance he once knew intimately. Teddy, spitting blood and teeth, came at him again, a feral snarl distorting his face. He lunged, desperate. Hutch met him, a blur of the motion. His hand clamped around Teddy's throat, his thumb pressing hard against the windpipe. A gurgle, a desperate gasp. Teddy's eyes bulged, his face turning purple. Hutch held him, the life draining from the man's eyes, until the bus driver, a terrified old man, slammed on the brakes. The sudden stop sent Teddy sprawling. He lay on the floor, gasping, wheezing, his throat crushed. Hutch looked down at the struggling man, a flicker of something, a distant echo of his former self. He saw the man suffocating, heard the desperate, rattling breaths. He pulled a pen from his pocket, then a straw from a discarded soda cup. With a grim determination, he knelt, found the soft spot in Teddy's neck, and with the swift, brutal puncture, inserted the straw. A crude glycothyroidotomy. Air hissed through the makeshift tube, a desperate lifeline. Teddy's gasps became less strained, but his eyes were still wide, unseeing, a vacant stare. He was breathing, but his mind was gone. Hutch stood, his chest heaving, knuckles bruised, a thin smear of blood on his cheek. The bus was silent, save for Teddy's ragged breathing and the terrified whimpers of the young woman. He looked at her, a silent apology in his eyes, then stepped off the bus, leaving the carnage behind. Becca watched him enter the house, the faint scent of stale beer and blood preceding him. He moved like a man made of pain, favoring his left shoulder. His knuckles were raw, his shirt torn. She simply nodded, her gaze knowing. "The first aid kit is under the sink," she said, her voice quiet. He sat at the kitchen table, the familiar domesticity a stark contrast to the violence he had just unleashed. She cleaned his cuts, her touch gentle, practiced. Her fingers brushed against his skin, the ghost of intimacy. "It's been a while," she murmured, her eyes meeting his. A question hung in the air, unspoken. Hutch looked at his reflection in the dark window, a stranger staring back. "I tried, Becca," he confessed, the words tumbling out, a torrent of long-suppressed frustration. "I tried to be that guy, the one who just a broken bar let it go, the one who's happy with the spreadsheets and the quiet nights, the one who doesn't a broken bar break things." He pulled his hand away from hers, clenching his fist. "But it's like trying to hold your breath underwater. You can do it for a while, but eventually, you have to come up for air. And when you do broken bar it's a goddamn explosion." He looked at her, his good eye pleading for understanding. "I'm suffocating, Becca. I'm dying a slow, boring death." She leaned in, her forehead resting against his. "I know," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I know who you are, Hutch. I always have." Her arms wrapped around him, a fierce, desperate embrace. He felt the warmth of her body, the soft press of her cheek against his. The chasm between them, for a fleeting moment, narrowed. He buried his face in her hair, inhaling the familiar scent of lavender, finding solace in her acceptance. Yulian Kuznetsov sat in his opulent club, the air thick with cigar smoke and the clinking of glasses. His face, usually a mask of cold calculation, was contorted with rage. Teddy, his younger brother, lay in a hospital bed, a breathing tube in his throat, his mind fractured. "You tell me," Yulian snarled, his voice a low growl, "who did this to my brother?" His lieutenant, a hulking brute named Victor, trembled. "We found a MetroCard, boss, dropped at the bus stop." "Hutch Mansell." Yulian's fingers drummed on the polished mahogany table. "Hutch Mansell. Find him, and then, find everything about him." Days later, the phone rang. Hutch answered, his voice weary. It was Harry, the guy on the bus. "Hutch." Harry's voice was strained, urgent. "Teddy." His brother is Yulian Kuznetsov. "You know the name." Hutch's blood ran cold. Yulian. The name echoed in the darker corners of his memory. A ghost from a past he thought long buried. "Obshchak," he breathed. "Yeah," Harry confirmed. "He's got the whole damn mob tied up. And he just found out who you are. He's asking about the barber. You need to call him, Hutch, now." A chill snaked down Hutch's spine. The barber, his former handler, the man who had given him his orders, then his freedom. The front door burst open. A team of dark-clad figures, assault rifles raised, stormed into the house. Hutch reacted with the speed of a coiled spring. "Get down!" he bellowed, shoving Becca and the kids behind the kitchen island. Bullets ripped through the plaster, splintering wood. Crack, crack, crack. Hutch grabbed a heavy cast-iron pan, a makeshift shield. He moved low, fast, a phantom in his own home. He heard Sammy's terrified whimper, Brady's choked cry. A mobster burst into the kitchen, his face a grim mask. Hutch swung the pan, a metallic thwack as it connected with the man's temple. The man dropped, a dead weight. Hutch snatched his rifle, the cold metal familiar in his hands. He moved through the house, a brutal ballet of violence. He cleared the living room, the dining room, each shot precise, deadly. Bang! A figure crumpled. Thump! Another fell. The silence between shots was punctuated by the desperate cries of the wounded, the heavy thud of bodies. He was a whirlwind, a force of nature unleashed. The years of mundane living, the forced calm, had merely sharpened the blade. He heard a taser zap behind him, a searing pain erupting in his back. His muscles seized, his body locking up. He fell, the rifle clattering to the floor. Rough hands grabbed him, dragging him across the floor. He saw Becca's horrified face, Brady shielding Sammy. He tried to fight, but the current still coursed through him, rendering him helpless. They bound him, threw him into the trunk of a car. The heavy lid slammed shut, plunging him into darkness. The car sped off, the muffled sounds of the city fading into the roar of the engine. He lay there, his body screaming, his mind racing. He heard the voices of his captors, guttural Russian, punctuated by harsh laughter. Then, a thought, cold and sharp, cut through the pain. The fire extinguisher. He remembered seeing it, strapped to the inside of the trunk. He strained, his bound hands fumbling, searching in the dark. His fingers brushed against the metal cylinder. With the surge of adrenaline, he twisted, grabbed, and aimed. He pressed the lever, a blinding cloud of white foam erupting into the car's interior. The driver screamed, the car swerving wildly. He heard shouts, curses, then a sickening crunch of metal on metal. The car spun, a violent symphony of grinding steel and shattering glass. He was thrown against the side of the trunk, the impact jarring his teeth. Silence. Then, the smell of gasoline. He pushed, kicked, fought against the mangled metal of the trunk. With the final, desperate heave, the lid popped open. He crawled out, gasping, into the cool night air. The car was a twisted wreck, its occupants mangled, lifeless. He stumbled away, the adrenaline wearing off, leaving him shaking. He had to get back. He had to protect his family. He ran, the streetlights blurring, until he reached his house. The front door hung open, a gaping maw. He found them, huddled together in the living room, Becca holding Sammy, Brady clutching a kitchen knife. "It's okay," Hutch panted, his voice raw. "It's over." He pulled them close, a fierce embrace. "You need to go now." Becca looked at him, her eyes wide. "Go where?" "Anywhere," Hutch insisted. "Away from here. Don't stop until you're safe." He ushered them out the back door, watching them disappear into the night. Then, he turned back to the house, to the wounded men scattered like broken dolls. Two were still alive, barely, their bodies twitching, groaning. He knelt beside the first, a young man, blood bubbling from his mouth. "You want to know who I am?" Hutch whispered, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. "I'm the guy you call when you want to disappear. I'm the guy who cleans up the messes. I was an auditor, for the U.S. intelligence community." He paused, the ghost of a smile touching his lips. "I saw things, did things. Things that would make your skin crawl." He looked at the dying man, his eyes unfocused. "One time, in Europe, I had a target, a bad man, but he was repentant. He begged for his life. I saw something in his eyes, a chance for something different. I let him go. He built a new life, a family, found peace." Hutch's voice grew wistful. "I wanted that. I wanted to be like him, to build a quiet life, to be a nobody." He stood, looking down at the dying man. Their breaths grew shallower, their movements slowing. He had been trying to be a nobody, but the world, it seemed, wouldn't let him. The last of the attackers faded, their eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. He was alone. Hutch moved with purpose. He found a hidden floor panel in the study, a relic from a past life. He pulled it open, revealing a stash of gold bars and bundles of cash. He filled a duffel bag, his movements efficient, practiced. Then, he doused the house with gasoline, the pungent odor filling the air. He lit a match, the small flame dancing in his hand. He watched the house ignite, the flames licking greedily at the walls, erasing all evidence, all traces of the life he had tried to build. He walked away, leaving the inferno behind, the heat of physical pressure on his back. He found his neighbor's Dodge Challenger, a sleek, powerful machine, keys conveniently left in the ignition. He slid behind the wheel, the roar of the engine a primal scream. He was no longer a nobody. He was coming for Julian. David Mansell, Hutch's father, sat in his sun-drenched retirement home, sipping lukewarm tea. A retired FBI agent, his eyes still held a spark of the old fire, though his movements were slower, more deliberate. Two men in dark suits approached his table. "Mr. Mansell?" one asked, his voice smooth, too smooth. David looked up, his gaze flicking to the subtle bulge under the man's jacket, the way the second man held his hand casually near his waistband. He smiled, a thin, knowing curve of his lips. "Gentlemen, can I help you?" The first man reached into his jacket, before his hand could clear his weapon. David's teacup shattered, its contents splashing across the man's face. David moved with a surprising speed, his cane whipping out, catching the second man behind the knee. As the man buckled, David's other hand, a blur of the motion, snatched the pistol from the first man's grasp. Blam! A muffled shot, the sound swallowed by the thick carpet and heavy drapes. The first man slumped, a neat hole in his forehead. The second man, still reeling, looked up, his eyes wide with shock. David brought the butt of the pistol down, a swift, brutal strike to the temple. The man dropped, unconscious. David sighed, adjusting his spectacles. "Honestly," he muttered, "do they never learn?" He called the front desk, his voice calm. "Security, I believe we have a slight broken bar disturbance in the common room." Hutch drove, the Challenger a blur on the highway, heading for Eddie's metal fabrication factory. He used the gold, a weighty payment, to buy the place outright. Eddie, stunned, could only stammer as Hutch signed the papers. "What in God's name are you doing, Hutch?" Eddie demanded, his face a mixture of shock and confusion. Hutch simply looked at him, a grim smile playing on his lips. "Cleaning house." He spent hours, days, transforming the factory. He rigged the ventilation system with incendiaries, placed tripped wires, set up choke points. The place became a death trap, a steel and concrete labyrinth designed for one purpose: war. Then, he went hunting. Julian's headquarters, a sprawling complex disguised as a legitimate business, bustled with activity. Hutch, the ghost in the night, slipped past security, a backpack slung over his shoulder. He moved through the building, his movements precise, silent. He found the vault, the heart of Julian's operation, the object money, the lifeblood of the Russian mob. He opened the vault, stacks of cash, crisp and green, gleaming under the dim light. He doused it all with an accelerant, a grin spreading across his face. He lit a flare, tossed it in, and watched the flames erupt, a roaring inferno consuming Julian's fortune. The smell of burning money, acrid and sweet, filled his nostrils. He walked out, leaving the chaos behind, the alarms wailing, a symphony of destruction. He found Julian at his club, a dark, opulent den of vice. Hutch walked in, a claymore mine slung over his shoulder, its ominous shape attracting immediate attention. The music died. All eyes turned to him. Julian, surrounded by his bodyguards, rose from his plush seat, his face a mask of disbelief, then fury. "Mansell," he hissed, his voice trembling with rage. "You burned my money. You destroyed everything." Hutch dropped the claymore on a table, its lethal contents facing Julian. "I'm offering you a chance to walk away, Julian," he said, his voice calm, devoid of emotion. "It ends here. No more. You go your way, I go mine." Julian stared at the mine, then at Hutch, his eyes burning with hatred. "You think this is over? You think you can burn my empire and walk away?" He laughed, a chilling, humorless sound. "You are a dead man, Mansell." "A dead man walking." Hutch sighed, a weary exhalation. "Your choice." He turned, walking out of the club, leaving the claymore ticking ominously. The chase was a blur of screeching tires and flashing lights. Julian and his men, a horde of black SUVs, pursued Hutch to the factory. He slammed through the gates, the Challenger a battering ram, then abandoned it, disappearing into the labyrinthine interior. Julian's men swarmed the factory, a wave of dark-clad figures, their weapons raised. Crack crack crack. The first tripwire detonated, a flash of light, a deafening explosion, sending bodies flying. Hutch moved, a shadow among the machinery, picking off men with lethal precision. He heard familiar gunshots, sharp and authoritative, from the far end of the factory. Harry and David. They had come. "Took you long enough," Hutch yelled, ducking behind a stack of steel beams. Harry, his face grim, returned fire, a shotgun roaring. Traffic was a bitch. David, an old warhorse, moved with surprising agility, his FBI-issue pistol spitting fire. Still got it, son. They fought, a brutal symphony of gunfire, explosions, and guttural cries. Hutch, Harry, and David, a deadly trio, systematically dismantled Julian's forces. The factory became a slaughterhouse, the metal walls echoing with the sounds of battle. Waves of mobsters fell, their numbers dwindling. Hutch felt the familiar ache in his bones, the burning in his lungs, but the surge of adrenaline kept him moving. He saw Harry take a hit, a grunt of pain escaping his lips as he clutched his side. "You okay?" Hutch yelled, laying down suppressing fire. Harry nodded, his face pale. "Just a scratch." They were almost through them. The last few mobsters fell, silence descending, broken only by the groans of the wounded. They caught their breath, leaning against a towering piece of machinery, their weapons smoking. Then, a sudden movement. Julian, his face contorted with unadulterated fury, emerged from the shadows, a heavy pistol in his hand. He fired, a clean shot, catching Harry in the shoulder. Harry cried out, dropping his shotgun. "No!" Hutch roared, his own weapon empty. Julian raised his pistol, aiming for David. Hutch moved, a desperate, lunging tackle. He slammed into Julian, knocking him off balance. The claymore mine, taped to a panel of bulletproof glass he had salvaged, was clutched in Hutch's hands. He had planned for this. Julian struggled, snarling, his pistol clattering away. Hutch held him, pressing the claymore against his chest, the glass panel between them. "This ends now, Julian," Hutch growled, his face inches from the crime lords. Julian's eyes widened, a flicker of genuine fear replacing the rage. "No, don't." Hutch pressed the detonator, a blinding flash, a concussive boom. The factory shook, shrapnel shrieked through the air. The bulletproof glass panel deflected the main force of the explosion, shielding Hutch, but the shockwave threw him back, a violent impact against a steel beam. He landed hard, his body screaming in protest. He tasted blood, felt the searing pain in his side. He looked up. Julian was gone, vaporized, only a charred smear remaining on the opposite wall. The factory was silent, save for the ringing in Hutch's ears and the distant wail of sirens. The familiar fluorescent lights, the cold metal chair, the two agents, their faces grim, their files thick. "Mr. Mansell," the first agent said, his voice softer now, tinged with something akin to awe. "We have reports of broken bar significant casualties at a factory and a club. And your home." Hutch stared at the wall. His body throbbed, a dull, insistent rhythm. "Julian Kuznetsov is dead," the second agent added, his gaze fixed on Hutch. "Along with most of his organization, the Obchchak money a broken bar incinerated." Hutch closed his good eye, a weary sigh escaping his lips. "I'm nobody," he repeated, the words holding a new weight, a new truth. Suddenly, both agents' phones buzzed, simultaneously. They looked at each other, then picked up. Their voices were low, hushed. Hutch watched them, a faint smile playing on his lips. He knew that call. The barber, or someone higher, someone who understood that some messes were better left unexamined. The agents hung up, their faces blank, unreadable. "Mr. Mansell," the first agent said, his voice devoid of emotion. "You're free to go." 3 months later, the new house was smaller, cozier, nestled on a quiet street with a manicured lawn. Sammy chased a butterfly through the garden, her laughter bright and unfettered. Brady, headphones on, still grumbled about chores, but his eyes held a newfound respect for his father. Becca, her hand tucked into Hutch's, squeezed gently. The chasm had closed. "It's good, isn't it?" she whispered, her gaze soft. Hutch nodded, a genuine smile touching his lips. "It is." He had found his peace, or at least, a version of it. The mundane no longer felt like a cage, it felt like a sanctuary. His phone buzzed. He pulled it out, a number he didn't recognize. He answered. "Hutch Mansell?" a distorted voice asked, a whisper of static. "We have another job for you." Hutch's smile faltered. He looked out at his family, then back at the phone. The quiet life, it seemed, was always just a temporary reprieve. He hung up, the distant hum of trouble a faint echo in his ears. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. Harry and David sat in a well-worn camper, its engine rumbling softly. Guns lay on the dashboard, glinting in the fading light. "Think he'll call?" David asked, his voice raspy. Harry grinned, a glint in his eye. "Oh, he'll call. They always do." He shifted gears, the comperv rumbling across the border, leaving the quiet behind, heading towards whatever came next. Casting Bob Odenkirk as Hutch Mansell, the unlikely action hero. The decision to cast Bob Odenkirk as Hutch Mansell in Nobody, 2021, marked a pivotal moment in the film's development, transforming a script born from personal trauma into a subversive action thriller. Odenkirk, best known for his comedic and dramatic turns in Mr. Show with Bob and David and as the morally ambiguous lawyer Saul Goodman in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, was not an obvious choice for a lead role requiring brutal hand-to-hand combat and high-stakes chases. Yet, his attachment to the project predated the formal casting process, dating back to around 2011 when a real-life home invasion left him grappling with vulnerability and suppressed rage. This incident, where Odenkirk chose not to confront the intruders aggressively mirroring the early restraint of his character Hutch, sparked the initial concept for the film. He collaborated with screenwriter Derek Kolstad, whose work on John Wick had already established him as a master of revenge-fueled narratives, to craft a story about an everyman whose mundane life conceals a violent past. By January 2018, Odenkirk was officially announced as the star and the producer on the project, with Ilya Naishuller attached to direct. Naishuller, fresh off the found-footage frenzy of Hardcore Henry, 2015, was drawn to the script precisely because Odenkirk was already in place. In an interview with RogerRabbit.com, Naishuller revealed, "There's two reasons I took this film. One, Bob. Obviously, I've loved Bob since Mr. Show. This pre-existing commitment allowed the casting to build around Odenkirk's unique persona, a middle-aged, unassuming figure whose dry wit and everyman charm could subvert action hero tropes." Naishuller emphasized the element of surprise in his vision, stating, "Robert McKee said, a film is the gap between expectation and reality. If you surprise people, you can't go wrong." Casting Odenkirk embodied this philosophy of viewers expecting a buttoned-up comedian would instead witness him dismantling foes with improvised weapons like Q-tips and toilet brushes. Odenkirk's preparation for the role was as unconventional as his casting. Unlike traditional action stars who bulk up for the camera, he deliberately avoided a superhero physique, opting for a lean, relatable build that underscored Hutch's humanity. Starting in 2018, he trained rigorously with stunt coordinator Daniel Bernhardt and the team at 8711 Action Designate known for Atomic Blonde and John Wick for 2 full years before principal photography began in September 2019. This wasn't mere stunt work. Odenkirk immersed himself in martial arts, knife fighting, under a trainer who worked with Navy SEALs, and even studied Bruce Lee videos on YouTube, attempting to incorporate techniques like the one-inch punch, though he was ultimately advised against it for safety. In a GQ interview, Odenkirk explained his drive: "I wanted to make it right, and I wanted it to maybe destroy my career." He performed nearly all his own stunts, including the film's centerpiece Bus Brawl, where he executed 15 pull-ups across multiple takes at age 55. This commitment extended to emotional authenticity, drawing from his own break-ins and a youthful mugging in Chicago. Odenkirk infused Hutch with the palpable fear beneath the fury, ensuring the violence felt cathartic rather than cartoonish. The casting ripple effect of Odenkirk's involvement was immediate. As a producer alongside David Leitch, of 87 North Productions, he influenced the tone, insisting on a straight-faced approach without ironic winks, a departure from his comedic roots. Naishuller, in turn, tailored the action to Odenkirk's capabilities, using long takes to showcase his precision rather than relying on shaky cam or quick cuts. This synergy elevated Nobody beyond genre exercise, making Odenkirk's casting not just a gamble but a revelation. Critics and audiences alike praised Hutch's vulnerability, gasping for breath after fights, limping from injury, as a humanized the archetype, proving that an overlooked ad couldn't carry a film as effectively as a chiseled icon. Alexei Serebryakov as Yulian Kuznetsov, bringing ruthless intensity to the antagonist. While Odenkirk's casting provided emotional core, the selection of aaligazer as Yulian Kuznetsov injected the film with a chilling, unpredictable menace. Serebryakov, a Russian theater and film veteran known for intense roles in Andrey's Vyazhin's Leviathan, 2014, and Loveless, 2017, was chosen to embody the film's central villain, a mid-level mafia enforcer obsessed with the stolen object, communal fund, that spirals into a personal vendetta against Hutch. Schuller, leveraging his Russian heritage and fluency in the language, sought authenticity in the antagonist's portrayal, avoiding Hollywood stereotypes of gravel-voiced thugs. In interviews, he rarely delved into specifics of Serebryakov's audition, suggesting it was a swift match but emphasized the actor's ability to blend cold calculation with explosive rage, mirroring Yulian's arc from dismissive boss to unhinged hunter. Serebryakov's background made him ideal. Trained at the prestigious Moscow Art Theater School, he had built a career alternating between brooding introspection and raw physicality, much like Odenkirk's pivot but rooted in Eastern European cinema's unflinching realism. For Nobody, he relocated to Winnipeg for filming, immersing himself in the role alongside his on-screen siblings, including Alexander Pal as the hot-headed Teddy Kuznetsov. The casting decision amplified the film's cultural texture. Yulian scenes, laced with Russian dialogue and ballet hall brutality, felt lived-in rather than exoticized. Schuller noted in a Slash-Film interview that the antagonist's unpredictability, escalating from a simple theft to a full-scale assault on Hutch's familia, was key to the surprise element, with Serebryakov's steely gaze providing the perfect foil to Odenkirk's frayed everyman. Behind the scenes, Serebryakov's integration highlighted the casting's collaborative nature. As the only major Russian-speaking lead, he influenced script tweaks for authenticity, particularly in the warehouse finale where Yulian's defeat unfolds in a symphony of shattered glass and gunfire. His physical commitment matched Odenkirk's at 55. Serebryakov performed his own wire work and fights, adding visceral weight to confrontations like the ice rink ambush. This parody and dedication at two middle-aged actors pushing their limits underscored Schuller's vision of addiction to violence as a shared human frailty, not a superpower. Serebryakov's casting thus wasn't merely oppositional, it created a mirror to Hutch, forcing audiences to confront the thin line between hero and monster. Connie Nielsen as Becca Mansell, grounding the domestic stakes. Connie Nielsen's casting as Becca Mansell, Hutch's resilient wife, added layers of emotional depth to Nobody's high-octane framework. Announced in October 2019 alongside Christopher Lloyd, Nielsen was selected for her ability to portray quiet strength amid chaos, a quality honed in roles like Wonder Woman in Justice League, 2017, and the fierce matriarch in The Courier, 2019. Becca isn't a damsel, she's a successful professional whose skepticism toward Hutch's retirement from his shadowy past drives early tension, making her integral to the film's exploration of suppressed identities in marriage. Schuller, in a We Live Entertainment interview, praised Nielsen's grounded presence, noting how her Danish accent and poised demeanor contrasted the American suburbia, subtly hinting at the family's fragile normalcy. Nielsen's selection stemmed from her versatility in blending vulnerability with ferocity. At 54 during filming, she brought lived experience to Becca's arc, from exasperated spouse dismissing Hutch's midlife malaise to a fierce protector during the home invasion. In the script's pivotal bracelet scene where Becca gifts Hutch a family heirloom only for it to be stolen, Nielsen's subtle micro-expressions conveyed unspoken resentments, elevating what could have been a trope into a poignant marital snapshot. Her chemistry with Odenkirk, forged during table reads in Los Angeles, was immediate. Odenkirk later credited her with keeping the family scenes honest, preventing them from devolving into melodrama. The casting process for Nielsen emphasized narrative balance, with Universal acquiring distribution rights in April 2019. The team sought a lead actress who could anchor the domestic front without overshadowing the action. Nielsen, with her international resume including Gladiator, 2000, fit seamlessly, her poise allowing Schuller to intercut family dinners with brutal set pieces. Post-release, Her performance drew acclaim for humanizing the stakes. Becca's quiet fury in the aftermath of the burglary, questioning Hutch's passivity with a mix of hurt and defiance, mirrored Odenkirk's own real-life regrets, adding meta-resonance. By March 2021, Nielsen expressed eagerness for a sequel, underscoring how deeply she connected with the role. Her casting thus fortified nobody's core thesis: violence disrupts homes, but resilience rebuilds them. Christopher Lloyd as David Mansell, subverting age in action cinema. No casting choice in Nobody embodied surprise more than Christopher Lloyd as David Mansell, Hutch's eccentric father and retired FBI agent. At 81 during production, Lloyd iconic as Doc Brown in Back to the Future, 1985. He was suggested by Odenkirk himself, who envisioned an octogenarian unleashing pent-up fury to upend expectations. Nayshaller, in the awards radar interview, recalled, "We considered more expected actors, but Bob suggested Lloyd, and there were no further debates." Lloyd's warm, whimsical persona from roles like Uncle Fester in The Addams Family, 1991, made him perfect for David's reveal, a mild-mannered retiree who dispatches hitmen with antique shotguns and wry one-liners like "excessive, but glorious." Lloyd joined in October 2019, just as filming shifted to Winnipeg, and dove into the role with gusto. Insisting on authentic props, he rejected lightweight replicas for real, heavy firearms. Lloyd performed his own stunts, including the film's gleeful finale where David turns his suburban home into a booby-trapped fortress. This sequence, blending slapstick with shotgun blasts, showcased how his casting infused humor into the violence. Nayshaller described it as gentle situational comedy amidst the blood, elevating chuckles to full laughs. Lloyd's tattoo matching Hutch's, a subtle nod to their shared past, added emotional weight, transforming a cameo into a legacy reveal. The decision to cast Lloyd reflected Nayshaller's genre subversion. In a Deadline QA, he explained aiming to redefine action by featuring an elderly hero who moves like a grizzled wolf, drawing from influences like The Equalizer but with Royal Tenenbaums-esque quirkiness. Lloyd's enthusiasm arriving on set with scripted ad-libs that made Nayshaller laugh until it hurt ensured David's scenes popped without undermining tension. Post-release, Lloyd's turn became a fan favorite, proving ageism has no place in action. His casting not only surprised but inspired, echoing Odenkirk's own boundary-pushing. RZA as Harry Mansell, infusing hip-hop edge into family dynamics. RZA, the Wu-Tang Clan founder and filmmaker behind The Man with the Iron Fists, 2012, brought a rhythmic intensity to Harry Mansell, Hutch's adopted brother and fellow ex-operative. Cast to round out the Mansell family unit, RZA's selection stemmed from Nayshaller's desire for eclectic chemistry. As he told RogerRebert.com, "You don't expect to see RZA, Lloyd, and Bob as a family kicking ass, but because of that it works so much better." RZA, with his martial arts background from Shaolin training, was a natural fit for Harry's laid-back lethality, dispensing wisdom in corridor shootouts while wielding a katana. The casting process for RZA highlighted the project's improvisational spirit. Attached mid-development, he collaborated on fight choreography, blending hip-hop flow with kung fu precision in the warehouse climax. His scenes with Odenkirk crackled with brotherly banter, drawing from RZA's real-life mentorship vibes. Nayshaller praised RZA's musical timing and action beats, making fights feel like choreographed tracks. This choice diversified the cast, merging street cred with suburban satire. The Next Generation, Gage Munro and Paisley Kitterat as the Mansell children. Gage Munro and Paisley Kitterat were cast as Brady and Sammy Mansell to capture the innocence shattered by the plot's inciting burglary. Munro, 19 during filming with credits in Twilight Saga, Eclipse, 2010, embodied Brady's teenage angst, his bus harassment sparking Hutch's rampage out with authentic vulnerability. Kitterat, a young newcomer, brought wide-eyed terror to Sammy's teddy bear loss, the emotional fulcrum. Their auditions focused on family chemistry tests with Odenkirk and Nielsen, ensuring natural dynamics. Nayshaller noted the kids' poison-tense scenes amplified the stakes, making violence feel personal. Michael Ironside and Colin Salmon, veteran anchors in supporting roles. Michael Ironside as Eddie Williams, Becca's gruff father and Hutch's boss, leveraged his gravelly authority from Scanners, 1981, and Total Recall, 1990, cast for his no-nonsense edge. Ironside's interrogation scene blackmailing Hutch with family photos added corporate menace. Colin Salmon as the barber, Hutch's enigmatic handler, drew from his Resident Evil villainy, delivering cryptic exposition with suave menace. Both were quick picks, their gravitas balancing the film's youth. Billy McClellan as Charlie Williams injected comic relief as the bumbling brother-in-law, his addition emphasizing physical comedy in the gun range fiasco. Araya Mensah and the Kuznetsov enforcers, layers of antagonistic depth. Araya Mensah's Pavel, Yulian's imposing bodyguard, subverted gender norms with her half-Ethiopian, half-Russian heritage and stunt prowess doubling in fights against Odenkirk. Alexander Pala's daddy brought manic energy, his casting prioritizing raw intensity for the Bustogs beatdown. Stunt performers and minor roles, the unsung backbone Daniel Bernhardt, Elaine Moussi, and Street 8 copyright Fane Julian as the bus assailants were stunt veterans, the real fight backgrounds ensuring brutal realism. Bernhardt even trained Odenkirk personally. Humberly Gons 8 inverted exclamation mark Les and Edson Morales as the home invaders added cultural nuance, their auditions stressing relatable desperation. Megan Best's harassed bus passenger amplified moral urgency, while J.P. Manooks's Pentagon mole provided bureaucratic satire. Kristen Harrison, Eric Athabale as FBI agents rounded out the procedural beats. Nayshaller himself cameoed as Anatoly, a hitman felled by David, and Sergei Shnurov as Valentin, blending insider humor with action. The casting ensemble's synergy, forging an unexpected family. The nobody cast wasn't assembled in isolation. Chemistry reads in pre-production at the Ensemble. Odenkirk's producer role ensured alignments, like Lloyd's suggestion amplifying familial bonds. Nayshaller, in Slash Film, detailed how Greg Remender's input shaped fights to highlight actors' strengths. Odenkirk's endurance, Lloyd's timing, RZA's flow. Filming's 34-day sprint in Winnipeg fostered camaraderie, with cast improv adding levity, like Ironside's ad-libbed barbs. This holistic approach rooted in surprise, authenticity, and mutual respect made Nobody's casting a masterclass in genre reinvention. Each choice layered the narrative, from Odenkirk's haunted lead to Lloyd's gleeful patriarch, creating a tapestry where every punch landed with emotional resonance. Word count, approximately 5,020, excluding headings and citations. Production development and pre-production. The genesis of Nobody can be traced back to January 2018, when the project was first announced with Bob Odenkirk attached to star in what would become his first major action film role. The announcement came as a significant departure for Odenkirk, who was primarily known for his comedic work and his dramatic performance as Saul Goodman in Better Call Saul. The film was conceived as an action thriller that would showcase a different side of the veteran actor's capabilities. Derek Kolstad, the screenwriter behind the successful John Wick franchise, penned the script for Nobody. Kolstad's involvement brought immediate credibility to the project, given his proven track record in crafting compelling action narratives with depth and character development. His approach to Nobody would maintain the same meticulous attention to action choreography and world-building that made John Wick a phenomenon, while creating an entirely distinct universe and tone. The directorial duties were assigned to Ilya Nayshaller, the Russian filmmaker who had previously gained recognition for his innovative work on Hardcore Henry, 2015. A film shot entirely from a first-person perspective. Nayshaller's selection signaled the producer's intention to bring a fresh, dynamic visual approach to the action genre. His background in music video direction and his experience with kinetic, visceral filmmaking made him an ideal choice to helm the project. David Leitch, who had co-directed the first John Wick film and went on to direct Atomic Blonde and Deadpool 2, came aboard as a producer alongside Kelly McCormick through their production company 87 North Productions. Leitch's involvement provided crucial expertise in action filmmaking and helped establish the film's credentials within the growing landscape of stylized action cinema. The producing team also included Braden Aftergood, while Bob Odenkirk himself served as both star and producer through his company Odenkirk Provisiero Entertainment. which he operates with Mark Provisiero. The film's initial development saw STX Entertainment attached as a distributor, reflecting the company's strategy of investing in mid-budget action films with recognizable stars. However, the project would later undergo a significant change in its distribution arrangement, which would prove crucial to its eventual success. Tobey Maguire's involvement as an executive producer brought additional star power and industry connections to the project. Maguire's production company had been increasingly active in developing character-driven genre films, making Nobody a natural fit for his portfolio. The executive producing team was rounded out by Derek Kolstad himself, Mark S. Fisher, and Danny Martyr, creating a collaborative environment that balanced creative vision with commercial considerations. The casting process for Nobody was carefully orchestrated to support Odenkirk's transformation into an action star. Connie Nielsen and Christopher Lloyd also joined the cast in October 2019, bringing gravitas and experience to key supporting roles. Nielsen, known for her work in Gladiator and Wonder Woman, was cast as Becca Mansell, Hutch's wife, while Lloyd, the beloved character actor from Back to the Future, took on the role of David Mansell, Hutch's father. The addition of RZA, the legendary Wu-Tang Clan member and accomplished actor, as Harry Mansell, Hutch's brother, added both credibility and an unexpected element to the family dynamics. Russian actor Alexei Serebryakov was cast as the primary antagonist Yulian Kuznetsov, bringing authentic menace and cultural specificity to the role of the Russian crime boss. One of the most significant aspects of the pre-production phase was Bob Odenkirk's intensive physical preparation for the role. Odenkirk spent 2 years training with stuntman Daniel Bernhardt for the role and avoided bulking up as he didn't want to look like a superhero. This preparation was crucial to the film's success, as it needed to sell the transformation of a mild-mannered suburban father into a lethal operative. Odenkirk's commitment to the physical demands of the role extended beyond basic fitness training to include extensive fight choreography, weapons training, and stunt work. The decision to avoid the traditional superhero physique was a deliberate creative choice that served the film's central theme. Rather than transforming Odenkirk into an obviously powerful action star, the training focused on making him appear capable and dangerous while maintaining the everyman appearance that was essential to the character's credibility. This approach required careful coordination between the physical training, costume design, and cinematography to create the illusion of hidden lethality. Bernhardt, who also appeared in the film as one of the boss thugs, brought his extensive martial arts and stunt experience to bear in preparing Odenkirk for the demanding action sequences. The training regimen included not only physical conditioning but also detailed instruction in the specific fighting styles and weapon handling that would be featured in the film. This preparation was essential given that many of the action sequences would rely on practical effects and real physical performances rather than extensive digital enhancement. The script development process involved multiple drafts and refinements as Kolstad worked with Nobody needed to establish its own distinct identity and mythology. This involved creating unique supporting characters, establishing different rules for the underground world of assassins and criminals, and developing a tone that could accommodate both the film's violent action and its moments of dark humor. Filming principal photography began in Los Angeles in September 2019, marking the beginning of what would be an intensive 34-day shooting schedule. The production team's decision to start filming in Los Angeles provided access to the city's extensive film infrastructure, experienced crew members, and diverse locations that could serve the story's needs. The Los Angeles portion of the shoot focused on specific sequences that required the unique urban landscape and production resources available in the entertainment capital. Production moved to Winnipeg, Manitoba in October 2019, where the majority of the film would be shot. The decision to relocate to Winnipeg was primarily driven by economic considerations, as the Canadian city offered significant tax incentives and rebates for film productions. However, Winnipeg also provided practical advantages in terms of location variety and the ability to control shooting environments more effectively than would be possible in a major metropolitan area like Los Angeles. The Winnipeg locations were carefully selected to create the suburban American setting that was central to the film's premise. The production design team worked to transform Canadian locations into convincing American suburbs, paying close attention to details like signage, architectural styles, and environmental elements that would maintain the illusion for audiences. This required extensive coordination between the location scouts, production designers, and local authorities to ensure that the Canadian locations could effectively double for American settings. The 34-day shooting schedule was notably compressed for an action film of this scope and ambition. This tight timeline required meticulous planning and preparation from all departments, with particular emphasis on the complex action sequences that formed the centerpiece of the film. The limited shooting schedule meant that there was little room for error or extensive reshoots, placing additional pressure on the cast and crew to deliver polished performances and technical execution on the first take whenever possible. Naisheller's approach to directing the action sequences drew heavily on his experience with Hardcore Henry and his background in music video production. He employed dynamic camera movement, creative angles, and rapid-fire editing techniques to create visceral, immersive action sequences that would distinguish Nobody from other entries in the genre. The director's style emphasized practical effects and real performances over digital enhancement, requiring extensive coordination with the stunt team and special effects departments. The film's most memorable action sequence, the bus fight scene, presented particular challenges during production. The confined space of a bus interior required careful choreography and camera placement to capture the brutality and intensity of the fight while maintaining visual coherence. The sequence needed to establish Hutch's lethal capabilities while also revealing the character's enjoyment of returning to his violent past. This required precise timing between Odenkirk's performance, the stunt work, and the camera movements to create the desired emotional and physical impact. The factory finale sequence represented the production's most ambitious set piece, requiring extensive preparation and coordination between multiple departments. The metal fabrication factory location needed to be modified to accommodate the various booby traps and explosive devices that the script called for, while ensuring the safety of the cast and crew during filming. This involved close collaboration with special effects supervisors, pyrotechnicians, and stunt coordinators to create spectacular visuals while maintaining strict safety protocols. Odenkirk's performance during the action sequences was a crucial element of the film's success, and his preparations showed during the filming process. The actor performed many of his own stunts and fight sequences, lending authenticity to the action while creating a more convincing transformation from comedy actor to action star. This hands-on approach required careful safety planning and coordination with the stunt team to ensure that Odenkirk could deliver the required performances without injury. The cinematography team, led by director of photography Pavel Bartosiewski, employed a visual style that balanced the film's suburban setting with its increasingly violent and stylized action sequences. The camera work needed to establish the mundane reality of Hutch's everyday life while gradually transitioning to the more kinetic and dramatic visual language of the action sequences. This required careful planning of shot compositions, lighting schemes, and camera movements that would support the narrative progression from ordinary suburbanite to lethal operative. The production's costume and makeup departments played crucial roles in selling Odenkirk's transformation throughout the film. The character's appearance needed to evolve from the disheveled, defeated appearance of his suburban life to the more focused and dangerous look of his activated assassin persona. This transformation was accomplished through careful attention to wardrobe choices, makeup applications, and even subtle changes in posture and physicality that reflected the character's internal journey. The supporting cast's performances were integrated into the production through careful attention to their individual character arcs and relationships with the central character. Christopher Lloyd's scenes as David Mansell required special consideration given the veteran actor's age and the physical demands of the action sequences. The production team worked to accommodate Lloyd's capabilities while ensuring that his character remained an effective part of the film's climactic battle sequence. The international aspects of the production, particularly the Russian characters and dialogue, required authentic casting and language coaching to ensure cultural accuracy. Alexei Serebryakov's native Russian background provided authenticity to his role as the primary antagonist, while additional Russian-speaking actors were cast in supporting roles to maintain the credibility of the criminal organization that serves as the film's primary threat. Weather conditions in Winnipeg during the October filming period presented additional challenges for the outdoor sequences. The production team needed to account for changing seasonal conditions and the possibility of early winter weather that could impact the shooting schedule. This required flexible planning and backup options for key exterior sequences, particularly those involving vehicle stunts and action sequences that depended on specific weather conditions. The film's vehicle sequences, including car chases and crashes, required extensive coordination with stunt drivers and special effects teams. The production utilized both practical vehicle stunts and controlled crash sequences to create authentic-looking vehicular mayhem while maintaining safety standards. This involved careful planning of stunt sequences, use of specialized camera equipment, and coordination with local authorities to ensure that vehicle-based action sequences could be filmed safely in urban and suburban environments. Post-production. The post-production phase of Nobody began immediately following the completion of principal photography, with the editing team working to assemble the film's complex narrative structure and action sequences into a cohesive whole. The editing process was crucial to the film's success, as it needed to balance the character-driven dramatic moments with the spectacular action set pieces while maintaining appropriate pacing throughout the film's 92-minute runtime. The film's editing team, led by William Yeh and Devon Schiff, faced the challenge of crafting a narrative that could effectively showcase both Odenkirk's dramatic performance and the film's kinetic action sequences. The editing approach needed to support the character's transformation arc while delivering the visceral impact that audiences expected from a modern action film. This required careful attention to rhythm, pacing, and the gradual escalation of both character development and action complexity throughout the film. One of the most significant aspects of the post-production process was the color grading and visual effects work that enhanced the film's distinctive visual style. While Nobody relied primarily on practical effects and real stunt work, strategic use of digital effects was employed to enhance certain sequences and ensure visual consistency throughout the film. The visual effects team worked to seamlessly integrate practical and digital elements, particularly in the film's more spectacular action sequences. The sound design and mixing process played a crucial role in creating the film's immersive action sequences. The audio team worked to create a sonic landscape that would enhance the visceral impact of the fight scenes while supporting the more intimate character moments. This involved careful layering of sound effects, dialogue, and musical elements to create an audio experience that would complement the visual storytelling. The film's sound effects design required particular attention to the various weapons and combat sequences featured throughout the story. Each gun, blade, and impact needed to have a distinctive sonic signature that would contribute to the overall sensory experience while maintaining realistic believability. The sound team worked closely with the film's weapons and stunt coordinators to ensure that the audio elements accurately reflected the physical reality of the action sequences. Dialogue editing and automatic dialogue replacement (ADR) sessions were conducted to ensure clarity and consistency throughout the film. Given the international cast and the variety of accents and languages featured in the film, careful attention was paid to ensuring that all dialogue was clearly intelligible while maintaining the authentic character voices. This was particularly important for the Russian dialogue sequences, which needed to maintain linguistic authenticity while remaining accessible to English-speaking audiences through subtitles. The film's visual effects work, while not extensive, required careful integration to enhance practical effects and create certain environmental elements. Digital matte painting and set extension work was employed to enhance the film's locations and create more dramatic environments for key sequences. The visual effects team also worked to remove safety equipment and crew members from action sequences while maintaining the seamless appearance of practical stunts. The color grading process was essential to establishing the film's distinctive visual palette, which needed to evolve from the muted, mundane tones of Hutch's suburban life to the more dynamic and dramatic color schemes of the action sequences. The colorist worked closely with the director and cinematographer to create a visual progression that would support the narrative arc while maintaining visual consistency throughout the film. The film's marketing materials, including trailers, posters, and promotional clips, were developed during the post-production phase in coordination with Universal Pictures' marketing department. These materials needed to effectively communicate the film's unique premise, a comedy actor's transformation into an action star, while showcasing the spectacular action sequences that would attract genre audiences. The challenge was creating marketing materials that could appeal to both Odenkirk's existing fan base and action movie enthusiasts. The film's rating and censorship considerations were addressed during post-production, with the editing team working to achieve an R rating that would allow for the violent content while ensuring broad theatrical distribution. This required careful consideration of the film's most intense sequences and strategic editing choices that would maintain the impact of the violence while staying within the desired rating parameters. The international version considerations were also addressed during post-production, with different cuts and censorship requirements for various global markets. The post-production team worked to create versions that could satisfy different regional rating boards while maintaining the essential elements of the story and action sequences. Music. The musical score for Nobody was composed by David Buckley, a British composer known for his work on action films and television series including The Good Wife, November 22, 1963, and Honor. Buckley's approach to the Nobody score needed to capture both the suburban mundanity of Hutch's everyday life and the explosive energy of his transformation into a lethal operative. The composer worked closely with director Ilya Naishuller to create a musical landscape that would support the film's unique tonal shifts and character development. Buckley's compositional approach incorporated both traditional orchestral elements and contemporary electronic music to create a hybrid sound that could accommodate the film's diverse narrative requirements. The score needed to establish the monotonous routine of Hutch's suburban existence while gradually building toward the more dynamic and aggressive musical themes that would accompany his return to violence. This required careful thematic development and orchestral arrangement that could convincingly span the emotional range of the character's journey. The main theme for the character of Hutch Mansell was designed to reflect his dual nature, the outward appearance of a defeated suburban father concealing the lethal operative beneath. Buckley crafted melodic material that could be presented in both restrained, melancholy arrangements during the film's early sequences and more aggressive, driving configurations during the action scenes. This thematic flexibility allowed the score to provide both character insight and narrative momentum. The film's action sequences required particularly careful musical treatment, as the score needed to enhance the visceral impact of the fight scenes while maintaining musical coherence. Buckley employed driving rhythmic patterns, aggressive orchestration, and strategic use of electronic elements to create musical energy that would match the kinetic intensity of the visual action. The composer worked to ensure that the music would enhance rather than compete with the carefully choreographed sound design of the action sequences. One of the most memorable musical moments in the film occurs during the bus fight sequence, where the score builds from subtle tension to explosive action as Hutch reveals his true capabilities. Buckley's composition for this sequence needed to capture both the character's enjoyment in returning to violence and the brutal efficiency of his combat skills. The musical arrangement incorporated both orchestral and electronic elements to create a sound that was both contemporary and timeless. The factory finale sequence presented the composer with the challenge of creating music that could sustain dramatic tension across an extended action sequence while building to an appropriate climactic resolution. Buckley's approach involved layering multiple musical themes and motifs associated with different characters and conflicts, creating a complex musical tapestry that would support the visual spectacle while providing emotional resolution to the character arcs. The score's treatment of the family relationships in the film required a different musical approach, with more intimate and emotional musical material that could explore the dynamics between Hutch and his family members. Buckley composed themes for Becca, the children, and the extended family that could provide emotional grounding amid the film's violent action. These familial themes served as musical anchors that reminded audiences of the human stakes underlying the spectacular action sequences. The film's Russian antagonists were given their own musical identity through Buckley's use of specific instrumental colors and harmonic progressions that evoked the dangerous world of organized crime. The composer avoided obvious ethnic musical stereotypes while creating musical material that could effectively represent the threat posed by Julian and his organization. This approach required subtle orchestration choices that would create atmosphere without resorting to cliché told to copyright. The integration of popular music elements into the score was handled carefully to maintain the film's contemporary feel while supporting the narrative themes. Buckley worked with the music supervision team to ensure that licensed tracks and original score elements would work together cohesively rather than competing for the audience's attention. This collaborative approach was essential to creating a unified sonic identity for the film. The recording process for the Nobody score involved both orchestral sessions and electronic production work, allowing Buckley to create the hybrid sound that the film required. The orchestral recordings provided the emotional weight and dynamic range necessary for the film's dramatic moments, while the electronic elements added contemporary energy and textual variety to the action sequences. The score's mixing and integration with the film's overall sound design required careful attention to frequency ranges and dynamic levels to ensure that the music would enhance rather than mask the crucial sound effects and dialogue. Buckley worked closely with the film's sound mixing team to create a balanced audio landscape where all elements could contribute effectively to the storytelling. Released theatrical. The theatrical release of Nobody underwent significant changes due to external circumstances, ultimately shaping both its commercial performance and cultural impact. Originally, Universal Pictures had scheduled the film for a theatrical release on August 14, 2020, positioning it as a late summer action offering that could capitalize on the typically strong box office performance of genre films during that period. This initial release date reflected the studio's confidence in the project and their strategic positioning within the competitive landscape of action films. However, the emergence of the COVID-19 pandemic fundamentally altered the theatrical exhibition landscape, forcing repeated postponements and rescheduling across the industry. Nobody was not immune to these disruptions, experiencing multiple release date changes as Universal and theater chains grappled with the unprecedented challenges of operating during a global health crisis. The film's release was initially pushed back as theaters closed and reopened with limited capacity, fundamentally altering the economic calculations underlying theatrical distribution. The final theatrical release date of March 26, 2021, represented a strategic decision by Universal to position Nobody as an early entry in the post-pandemic recovery period for theatrical exhibition. This timing placed the film in a unique position within the marketplace, as it was among the first major studio releases to test audience appetite for returning to theaters following the worst period of the pandemic. The March 2021 release window also meant that Nobody would face limited competition from other major releases, as studios were still cautious about committing expensive marketing campaigns and wide releases to an uncertain theatrical environment. The theatrical release strategy for Nobody reflected the constraints and opportunities presented by the pandemic-altered exhibition landscape. Universal opted for a wide release across approximately 2,460 theaters in the United States and Canada. Despite reduced seating capacity and ongoing health concerns that were keeping many potential moviegoers at home, this approach demonstrated the studio's commitment to the theatrical experience while acknowledging the reality of reduced audience capacity and altered consumer behavior. The film's marketing campaign needed to address the unique challenges of promoting an action film during a period when audiences were hesitant to return to enclosed entertainment venues. Universal's marketing team crafted promotional materials that emphasized the film's escapist entertainment value while highlighting Bob Odenkirk's surprising transformation into an action star. The campaign leveraged Odenkirk's existing fan base from Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad while introducing him to action movie audiences who might not have been familiar with his previous work. The international theatrical release strategy reflected the varying pandemic conditions and restrictions across different global markets. The film was released in the United Kingdom on June 9, 2021, several months after the U.S. release, reflecting the different timeline of pandemic recovery and theater reopening in the UK market. This staggered international release approach became common during the pandemic period, as distributors worked to optimize their releases based on local market conditions and restrictions. The theatrical presentation of Nobody was designed to showcase the film's kinetic action sequences and visceral violence in the immersive environment that theaters could provide. The film was released in multiple formats, including standard digital projection and premium large-format screens, allowing audiences to experience the carefully choreographed action sequences with optimal visual and audio quality. This emphasis on the theatrical experience was particularly important for an action film that relied heavily on practical effects and physical stunt work. The theater chain partnerships and exhibition agreements for Nobody reflected the ongoing negotiations between studios and exhibitors during the pandemic period. Universal worked with major theater chains including AMC, Regal, and Cinemark to ensure wide availability while accommodating the various safety protocols and capacity restrictions that were in place at the time of release. These partnerships were crucial to the film's theatrical success, as they provided access to the largest possible audience during a period of reduced theater attendance. The film's theatrical run was characterized by strong per-screen averages despite overall reduced attendance figures that reflected broader industry trends during the pandemic period. Nobody demonstrated remarkable staying power in theaters, maintaining solid box office performance across multiple weekends as positive word-of-mouth and critical reviews drove continued audience interest. The film's success in the theatrical marketplace provided encouragement to both Universal and the broader industry regarding audience appetite for original, non-franchise action films. The premium pricing strategies employed for Nobody's theatrical release reflected the economic pressures facing both studios and theater chains during the pandemic period. Many theaters implemented premium pricing for new releases to offset reduced capacity and attendance, while some markets experimented with special screening formats and enhanced safety protocols that justified higher ticket prices. These pricing strategies became part of the broader industry evolution during the pandemic period. The film's performance in various theatrical markets provided valuable data about regional audience preferences and the ongoing viability of mid-budget action films in different geographic regions. Nobody performed particularly well in suburban and mid-tier markets, suggesting that its premise of suburban masculinity and everyday heroism resonated strongly with audiences outside of major metropolitan areas. Home media. The home media release strategy for Nobody reflected the evolving distribution landscape accelerated by the COVID-19 pandemic, with Universal Pictures implementing a compressed theatrical to digital window that would become increasingly common in the post-pandemic entertainment industry. The film's digital release timeline was significantly accelerated compared to traditional pre-pandemic standards, reflecting both the altered theatrical landscape and changing consumer expectations regarding content availability. The first stage of the home media release came with the film's availability on premium video on demand, VOD, platforms on April 15, 2021, just 3 weeks after its theatrical debut. This accelerated VOD release represented a dramatic shift from traditional distribution windows, which typically maintained a 90-day theatrical exclusivity period before digital availability. The decision to implement this shortened window reflected Universal's strategy to maximize revenue opportunities while theaters operated under capacity restrictions and consumer behavior shifted toward home entertainment options. The VOD release pricing strategy for Nobody typically ranged from $19.99 to $24.99 for a 48-hour rental period, positioning it as a premium entertainment option that could provide theater-quality viewing experiences in home environments. This pricing structure was designed to capture revenue from audiences who were either unable or unwilling to return to theaters during the pandemic period while maintaining some differentiation from lower-priced traditional video-on-demand offerings. The film's availability expanded to broader digital purchase and rental platforms on June 8, 2021, including iTunes, Amazon Prime Video, Google Play, Vudu, and other major digital retailers. This expanded digital availability typically featured lower pricing tiers, with rental options ranging from $3.99 to $5.99 and purchase prices generally falling between $14.99 and $19.99. The broader digital release allowed Nobody to reach audiences who preferred to wait for lower pricing while maintaining the revenue opportunities provided by the earlier VOD window. The physical media release of Nobody on DVD and Blu-ray disc formats occurred on June 22, 2021. Providing collectors and home theater enthusiasts with high-quality versions of the film along with supplementary materials. The Blu-ray release featured enhanced audio and video quality that showcased the film's action sequences and production values, while both formats included special features such as behind-the-scenes documentaries, deleted scenes, and commentary tracks from the filmmakers. The Blu-ray edition of Nobody included extensive special features that provided insight into the film's production process and the unique challenges of transforming Bob Odenkirk into an action star. These features included a making-of documentary titled Becoming Nobody, which chronicled Odenkirk's physical transformation and training process, along with detailed looks at the film's most challenging action sequences. Additional features included deleted and extended scenes, a gag reel showcasing the lighter moments during production, and commentary tracks featuring director Ilya Naishuller and key cast members. The DVD release provided a more accessible price point for mainstream consumers while including selected special features and maintaining high-quality audio and video presentation. The DVD version typically retailed for $15.20, making it an affordable option for casual viewers, while the Blu-ray version commanded premium pricing of $25.30 to reflect its enhanced technical specifications and expanded supplementary content. The film's entry into subscription streaming services began with its addition to HBO Max on January 21, 2022. As part of Universal Pictures' broader licensing agreements with Warner Bros. Discovery's streaming platform. This streaming availability provided Nobody with access to HBO Max's substantial subscriber base, introducing the film to audiences who might not have encountered it during its theatrical and premium digital release periods. However, the film's streaming availability was temporary, with Nobody leaving HBO Max on March 31, 2023. As part of the standard licensing rotation that characterizes modern streaming agreements, this removal reflected the complex licensing arrangements between studios and streaming platforms, where content availability often follows predetermined time windows rather than permanent placement. The international home media release strategy for Nobody varied by region, reflecting different market preferences and distribution partnerships. In some markets, the film received simultaneous digital and physical media releases, while others maintained more traditional windowing strategies. These regional variations were influenced by local consumer behavior patterns, digital infrastructure availability, and existing distribution partnerships. The film's performance in home media markets was particularly strong, with digital sales and rentals exceeding industry expectations for mid-budget action films. The combination of strong critical reviews, positive word of mouth, and Odenkirk's unique casting contributed to sustained interest across multiple home media release windows. Physical media sales, while smaller in overall volume, demonstrated solid performance among collectors and action film enthusiasts. The home media marketing campaign for Nobody emphasized the film's unique premise and Odenkirk's transformation, utilizing social media clips, behind-the-scenes content, and targeted advertising to maintain a war. The box office performance of Nobody must be understood within the context of the dramatically altered theatrical landscape created by the COVID-19 pandemic, which fundamentally changed both audience behavior and industry expectations for commercial success. Despite these challenges, the film achieved remarkable commercial success that exceeded industry projections and demonstrated the continued viability of original, mid-budget action films in a marketplace increasingly dominated by franchise properties and established intellectual property. Nobody grossed $27.6 million in the United States and Canada, and $29.9 million in other territories, for a worldwide total of $57.5 million, against a production budget of $16 million. These figures represented a significant commercial success, particularly when considered against the reduced theatrical capacity and altered audience behavior that characterized the pandemic period. The film's worldwide gross of $57.5 million against its modest production budget demonstrated the economic viability of well-crafted action films featuring unconventional casting choices. The domestic box office performance was particularly impressive given the constraints under which it was achieved. A week prior to its United States release, Variety estimated the film would gross around $5 million in its opening weekend, compared to its expectation that it would have opened to around $15 million in a pre-COVID marketplace. This projection reflected the industry's uncertainty about audience willingness to return to theaters and the impact of reduced seating capacity on overall box office potential. The film made $2.5 million on its first day, and went on to debut to $6.7 million, topping the box office. This opening weekend performance exceeded industry expectations and demonstrated that audiences were eager for quality entertainment options as theaters began to reopen. The fact that nobody managed to claim the #1 position at the box office during its opening weekend was particularly significant given the limited competition and reduced overall market activity during this period. The audience demographics for Nobody's opening weekend revealed important insights about its appeal and market positioning. 62% of the audience was male, with 56% being under the age of 35. These demographics suggested that the film successfully attracted both traditional action movie audiences and younger viewers who were drawn by the unique casting of Bob Odenkirk and the film's distinctive approach to the genre. The strong male demographic was expected for an R-rated action film, while the significant younger audience component indicated successful marketing to demographics that might not have been immediately familiar with Odenkirk's previous work. The film's second weekend performance demonstrated solid staying power in a challenging marketplace. The film fell 56% to $3 million in its second weekend, finishing third. While this represented a significant weekend-to-weekend decline, the 56% drop was actually considered reasonable for an action film, particularly given the limited theatrical marketplace and competition from other new releases. The third-place finish indicated that Nobody maintained strong audience interest and benefited from positive word-of-mouth recommendations. The international box office performance of $29.9 million represented nearly half of the film's total worldwide gross, demonstrating the global appeal of the action genre and Bob Odenkirk's international recognition from his television work. The international performance was particularly impressive given the staggered release schedule necessitated by varying pandemic conditions in different territories and the challenges of marketing an American action film featuring a primarily comedy-known actor to global audiences. The film's box office trajectory throughout its theatrical run demonstrated remarkable longevity, with Nobody maintaining solid per-screen averages and continuing to attract audiences well beyond its opening weekend. This sustained performance was attributed to strong critical reviews, positive audience reactions, and effective word-of-mouth marketing that helped the film find its audience despite the challenging theatrical environment. The economic success of Nobody relative to its production budget provided important validation for Universal Pictures' strategy of investing in original, mid-budget action films. With a production budget of $16 million, the film achieved profitability through its theatrical run alone, before accounting for additional revenue streams from digital sales, physical media, and licensing agreements. This financial performance demonstrated that carefully crafted genre films could achieve commercial success without the massive budgets typically associated with tentpole action releases. The film's performance in various theatrical markets provided valuable insights into regional audience preferences and the ongoing viability of action films in different geographic areas. Nobody performed particularly well in suburban and mid-tier markets, suggesting that its themes of suburban masculinity and everyday heroism resonated strongly with audiences outside major metropolitan areas. This geographic distribution of success highlighted the importance of understanding regional audience preferences in marketing and distribution strategies. The premium large formatter and IMAX performance of Nobody contributed significantly to its overall box office success, with these higher-priced formats accounting for a disproportionate percentage of the film's total revenue. Audiences' willingness to pay premium prices. Number 1. The Better Call Saul star gets a furiously entertaining star vehicle playing a suburban father who finds himself up against the Russian mob. For any vaguely fit actor over the age of 50, being given Your Own Taken was briefly seen as an enviable career boost, a chance to relive former glories, a slickly choreographed leap from an early Hollywood grave back to the sandlot. Ever since Liam Neeson swapped demoting for Punching back in 2008, Kevin Costner, Sean Penn, John Travolta, Pierce Brosnan and Guy Pearce all tried to do the same, but audiences wisely stayed away from their subpar shoot-'em-ups, and execs were forced to realize that, it's the star rather than the subgenre that people are magnetically drawn to. Because Neeson's stick was continuing to bring in solid crowds while his peers were flailing, and in 2014, Keanu Reeves found a similar sweet spot with John Wick, kicking off a hugely profitable new series with a Taken-adjacent combination of simple action plot and much-loved actor. With a burning desire for some of that Wick cash, the 3 films in total have made over $550 million worldwide, with the spin-off and TV series also planned. Universal has teamed up with the film's writer Derek Kolstad to crack open what's clearly hoped to be a new low-budget, high-profit action universe. This time the choice of lead is based less on conventional desirability and more on unconventional durability, with Better Call Saul's Bob Odenkirk as an unassuming suburban dad hiding a dark past in Nobody, a furiously entertaining thriller that, for me, worked far more effectively than any of Keanu's outings. A bit more character thrown in to cushion the many broken bones. The unusual career of Odenkirk, who in his 50s has experienced an unlikely transformation from that guy character actor to Emmy-nominated lead of a hit show, makes him a compelling action hero, confident enough to command, yet with a skill set that's more extensive and more versatile than just pure physicality. He plays the improbably named Hutch, a milquetoast everyman whose daily routine has grown as tired as his chilly marriage. When his house is set upon by a couple of low-rent thieves, he's set on a mission to right a wrong, revealing an adeptness for violence that's been kept far away from his family. It's a film cooked up from some overly familiar ingredients, as well as the blood and bullets. There's challenged masculinity, the Russian mob, a cute bet, some noirish voiceover etc., yet Kolstad, along with hardcore Henry director Ilya Naishuller on vibrant form, finds a way to make it all feel oddly vital. There's a simple, shaggy charm to watching Hutch rediscover his particular set of skills, kicked off by a fantastically well-designed bus sequence that sees him scrappily take on a group of obnoxious younger men. He's an imperfect yet resilient fighter, believably hampered by age, making him a character far more thrilling to watch than, say, any one of Neeson's no-stakes superheroes. The escalation that follows, which dominoes one good deed into one savage fight into something far greater, helps Nobody avoid the storytelling by numbers trap that so many revenge films often fall into, mimicking a video game with the hero going from one end of level boss to the next. The fight scenes are also awfully effective, a jolt of brutal violence captured with the specificity that allows us to keep up with every punch and kick. A base-level competency that so many action films fail to master. Perhaps the film's greatest ace is its relative lack of smugness, Kolstad's script briskly racing ahead without wasting time to stand back and remark on how smart and ironic it all is. Quips kept to a minimum, a lesson other action screenwriters could do with learning. Odenkirk is a surprisingly physically adept anchor, and while sure, the trope of a man only really being a man when he embraces his violent side is a broken bar not great, he tries his best to work around the regressive nature of the genre, turning Hutch into a man simultaneously trying to figure out the right balance of alpha and beta. There's little to do for Connie Nielsen as his confused wife, but Christopher Lloyd gets to have some fun as his gun-toting father, and along with RZA as his equally armed brother, there's an intriguing little family dynamic that will probably be explored in the inevitable sequel, Nobody's. Perhaps. It's all very been here, seen that, yet there's something infinitely pleasing about a film doing very little but doing it very well, knowing just how high to aim without aiming any higher, aware of exactly what it can and can't do. In a tight 91 minutes, without any bloat, Nobody gives us exactly what we want. Nobody is out in US cinemas on 26th of March with the UK release in June. Number 2. Before there were superhero films, there were don't get mad get even films. You might say that the two genres have nothing to do with each other, but in the early to mid-70s, when the revenge film as we know it was coming into being with Dirty Harry, Walking Tall, and Death Wish, part of the premise of the new pulp righteousness was that a man who seethed softly and carried a big weapon to cleanse the streets of scum had the kind of invincibility we now associate with demigods in spandex. The revenge genre, which could also be called the defend yourself because no one else will genre, became a mythology, a fusion of lone wolf western nostalgia and right-wing nihilism that any actor with enough muscle mass and the right scowl could plug into. Sly and Arnold, Chuck Norris and Steven Seagal, Bruce Willis, say they all, in a way, played variations on the same character, the ruthless bruiser who could never be defeated because he had the wrath of nobility on his side. His squint of cool rage was the only superpower he needed. Which brings us to Bob Odenkirk. You might say that Nobody, in which the wily star of Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad plays a glum suburban drone who gets in touch with his inner thug-bashing badass, follows every rule of the genre. It's got a hero who starts off as a workaday family man, with a nice wife, Connie Nielsen, and two nice kids. Then he's attacked by criminals in his own home, after which he starts to play dirty, give in to his death wish, and walk tall. It's in the middle of the night that a pair of robbers slip into the house. Odenkirk's Hutch Mansell, hearing noises, goes downstairs to investigate, and there's a scuffle, but it's between his teenage son, Blake, Gage Monroe, and one of the intruders. Hutch, holding a golf club for protection, can't bring himself to use it. The robbers leave, but Hutch finds himself being called a wimp. By whom? By the cops, his son, and his macho neighbor. By everyone who hears about the incident. We think we're watching a movie about a paragon of middle-class mildness, like Bryan Cranston's high school teacher in Breaking Bad, or Bronson's architect in Death Wish, who's about to tape into something he has never felt before. But then Hutch, in a moment of existential meltdown, takes a midnight bus ride, and the bus is soon occupied by half a dozen Russian goons looking for trouble. Hutch takes the handgun his brother gave him and pointedly drops the bullets out of the chamber and onto the floor. He then takes on the entire gang with his bare hands, and a blade or two, introducing the fight with the Eastwood-worthy line, "I hope these assholes like hospital food." Moments later, Hutch walks away, bruised but unbowed, and his victims are indeed headed for the hospital. How did this happen? Hutch, it turns out, was never what he seemed. He's got quite a backstory. And Nobody isn't the movie it seemed either. It was directed by Ilya Schuller, the audacious punk video auteur who has made just one previous feature, Hardcore Henry, 2015, a spectacularly grandiose and innovative sci-fi noir action thriller done almost entirely in one shot, all from the point of view of its cybernetic hero. I found it at once annoying and amazing, and Nobody proves again that Schuller, born in Russia and raised in London, may be as far as you can get from a psychological realist. The spirit of Sin City graphic novels and first-person shooter video games flows through his blood, but he's a born filmmaker. Nobody is a thoroughly over-the-top and, at times, Looney Tunes entry in the live and let die vengeance's mind genre. Is it a good movie? Not exactly. But its 90 minutes fly by, and it's a canny vehicle for Odenkirk, the unlikeliest star of a righteous macho bloodbath since Dustin Hoffman got his bear trap on in Straw Dogs. With his nerdishly parted receding hair, officious voice, and crestfallen air, Odenkirk could be the gloomier brother of Steve Carell, and you may wonder how we could start to buy him as the scariest person in the room. But Hutch possesses not so much brute strength as a certain deadly secret training and mad skill, and Odenkirk shows you how the payback brings him back to life. He'll need every bit of that skill, too. One of the thugs he damaged is the brother of Yulian, a Russian mobster played by aaligazer Becca from Leviathan, with the fearsome magnetism that's at once authentic and operatic. He's like the Frankenstein's monster of hard-partying hooligans. The plot of Nobody is, in a word, preposterous, but Odenkirk's conviction makes it work, as does the deranged twist of having Hutch team up with his retired FBI agent father, Christopher Lloyd, and adoptive brother, RZA. The movie is all about how Hutch, beneath his safe and colorless life, has to get back in touch with who he really is. And maybe that's a metaphor for the way a lot of middle-class nobodies feel. It would be overstating things, though, to push the meaning of a thriller like this one too far. It's just a cardboard fable. But when the ultra-violence erupts, the movie pops. Reviewed online, March 18, 2021. Pay rating, R. Running time, 91 minutes. Number 3. I've always had a weakness for action movies. While I really do quite enjoy most superhero films, I often find it frustrating that they've taken over the genre to such an extent that what little we get in terms of more traditional action films are mainly confined to the cookie-cutter, poorly made, straight-to-video, on-demand Bruce Willis movies of the week. So the arrival of Nobody, the new action thriller from screenwriter Derek Kolstad, creator of the John Wick franchise, was definitely on my radar. The title of Nobody refers to a man named Hutch, Bob Odenkirk, Better Call Saul, The Post, an average suburban father leading an average suburban life. But when burglars break into his suburban home at night, he declines to defend himself or his family, hoping to prevent serious violence. Hutch's teenage son, Blake, Gage Monroe, the Shack, is disappointed in him, and his already distant wife, Becca, Connie Nielsen, Gladiator, Wonder Woman, seems to pull only further away. The aftermath of the incident strikes a match to Hutch's long-simmering rage, triggering dormant instincts and propelling him on a brutal path that will surface dark secrets and lethal skills. The premise is rather simple, really a mix of John Wick and A History of Violence, but director Ilya Scheller, Hardcore Henry, deftly handles the nearly relentless barrage of intense and intricately staged fight scenes. Any way you look at it, this is an exceptionally well-made action movie. But even with the teaming up of Scheller, Kolstad and David Leitch, director of John Wick, Atomic Blonde and Deadpool 2, producing, the reason that Nobody stands out as a memorable and immensely enjoyable movie much comes down to a certain somebody, and his name is Bob Odenkirk. If the studio had insisted on a bankable, leading man type for this role, it would just be a pretty generic film made with skill but little sense of inspiration, and would be quickly forgotten. But the crux of the film's success is in the casting of one of Hollywood's premier average guys. Odenkirk transitioned from comedy to drama, has never even been a supporting player in an action film before, and is known for ability to make being a somewhat dull guy something endearing. Yet he makes Nobody into one of the most refreshingly different and gleefully entertaining genre films in years. Odenkirk is fantastic in the role, playing it straight, giving the character nuance and trusting that the sheer fact that he seems so unlikely as the lead in this kind of movie lends a disarming level of comedy, but that he's also a good enough actor to be surprisingly credible. It's likely to remembered as one of his signature performances. When you add to that the great cinematic treasure that is Christopher Lloyd as Hutch's father and RZA in an amusing role as Hutch's brother, it's just so utterly goofy, and for that reason, it's almost impossible not to grin all the way through the mayhem. Nobody is quite violent, though it's not particularly graphic. Still, it's an unapologetically R-rated and in-your-face movie that's not meant for everybody, but will really hit the spot for the crowd that needs a wickedly antisocial guilty pleasure with a tongue-in-cheek sense of dark comedy once in a while, and it couldn't be much more satisfying on that level. It's the kind of movie that helps you blow off steam after a bad day, and it will likely be embraced as a cult classic, as long as Odenkirk doesn't ruin it by using it to try to turn into an action star. The just this once nature of the film is more than half the charm, and I can't remember the last time I've hoped a movie I liked this much would not get a sequel. A. Patrick Gibbs. In the past, I've made it pretty clear that I think the John Wick series goes from solid to great after you get past the first film. Sure, the conceit is nearly perfect. Who wouldn't want to exact bloody vengeance on the men who murdered the adorable canine linked to your dead wife? But the action always let me down. But once David Leitch left for bigger budgets and worse films, the series became an action fan's box of gourmet chocolates. You never knew what you were going to get in one of them, but you knew that you were probably gonna like each and every new flavor. The great thing about Tillian A. Scheller's Nobody is that it's the movie that all of us imagined the first time we heard the premise for the first John Wick, a bloody, vividly directed tale of revenge based around the talents of one of the most undervalued and hardest-working men in show business, Bob Odenkirk. It is an insanely badass time at the movies, worthy of all manner of hoots and hollers at the screen, and should be seen by all of those interested in action cinema. Now, whether or not you know Odenkirk from Mr. Show, how's your okay soda tasting now, you Gen X slack motherfuckers reading this? Or Better Call Saul, or even shit like Greta Gerwig's Little Women, you know he's probably not the kind of dude you'd expect to know his way around a series of handguns, machine guns, and knives, or to be in his element breaking necks, stabbing, beating and inflicting all manner of grievous injuries upon goons from the Russian mob. And that's exactly why he's perfect for the role of Hutch Mansell, an ex-accountant, much like Ben Affleck's, and current actual accountant, who has retired from his original chosen profession to live a comfortable life in the suburbs with his wife, Connie Nielsen, and children. However, the monotony of it all is starting to weigh down on him. It's the same old, day in and day out, missing the garbage pickup when it comes once a week, dealing with his shithead brother-in-law at work, sleeping each night next to his ever-distant wife with a series of pillows separating them. That all begins to change when a pair of burglars break into his home, desperate for cash, waving a gun in his face. He decides to let them go, even after his son tries to help subdue them, and everyone, from his family to the cop who shows up in the break-in's aftermath, is embarrassed by his wimpish behavior. And, though he had his very good reasons for not lashing out at the time, he finally snaps when he discovers that the thieves stole his daughter's kitty cat bracelet, and so, he tracks them down, intimidating and scaring tattoo artists and others along the way. But his quest doesn't work out in the way he'd hope. While on his way home on a city bus, it's green, after all. A bunch of drunk Russian shitheads, including the nephew of a vengeful Russian banker, crash their SUV into a concrete embankment and marvel at their luck that they've got a new ride ready to take them to the next bar. Of course, they begin intimidating the other passengers and threatening the lone woman on the bus, and Hutch decides it's time to put up or shut up. What follows is one of the bester and most brutal action sequences to kick off a mid-budget actioner in quite some time. It's Odenkirk, who does his own stunts against 5 or 6 dudes of varying shape, size, and equipped weapon, and they have it out over the course of a 2-part fight involving broken bus rails, smashed windows, and trachea-breaking punches. It is beautifully staged and filmed, with each movement being clear and concise, and it's appropriately badass, as Odenkirk takes only a little less than what he dishes out, a clear, and wonderful, sign of the John Wick saga's effect on modern action cinema. Yes, I am aware of antecedents like the Indiana Jones films, but Hutch's near superheroic endurance feels more Keanu-like to me. It only gets bigger and broader from there, culminating in a mayhem-filled sequence in a factory that has to be seen to be believed, and I had a blast with it. I have had my issues with Scheller's style in the past, despite respecting his ability to craft massive amounts of mayhem at a small scale. I really did not care for his first film, Hardcore Henry, because of how it was stacked with lame genre cliches and how its first-person pov churned the contents of my stomach. But in Nobody, he makes his ample case for inclusion in the action directors of note directory that would be issued, in an ideal universe, to every dad with cable and spare time on a Sunday afternoon. There are a number of traits endemic to the subgenre that I've come to call Viagra action strewn throughout Nobody in its sub-100-minute runtime. It is, after all, a movie about a man who discovers that his children will respect him, his pals will kick ass with him, and that his wife will fuck him once again if he unleashes the beast within and annihilates dudes in the way he did when he was a much younger man. Yet Odenkirk's presence complicates things beyond simple old dude wish fulfillment, much in the same way that Reeves does within the John Wick framework, but it's a significantly weirder twist. While Wick is motivated by ceaseless and all-consuming grief, exploited by the savvy movers and shakers of the hyper-stylized world of prim assassins that he's a part of, Hutch is basically just a psychopath, who has been wearing the mask of sanity in an attempt to preserve and cultivate a kind of family life that he's never had for himself, much like a number of real-life serial killers, who thrived on the incongruity of that dual existence. The actor's grumpy irascibility, a mainstay of his screen presence throughout the years, is used to pitch-perfect effect here, making Hutch relatable at the very least as a kind of tertiary person who barely registers on all his radars, and his personality, though crabby, is carefully tuned to make sure that it never quite tilts in the direction of grievance, a la Michael Douglas in Falling Down.